What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazika, Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. And I worked this piece up for Forbes just after the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz bout, and I wanted to kind of touch on something because it seems that there was a bit of a misconception. I think a lot of people felt that just because Anthony Joshua was shockingly upset by Andy Ruiz on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden in New York, that meant that the chances of Joshua facing Deontay Wilder in 2020, or maybe even at all, were out of the window. And that is just totally not true. There are so many scenarios where not only will the two men still end up fighting, not only will they still end up fighting for the unified heavyweight title of the world, but I believe that it can still happen on the same timetable that it was going to happen to begin with. Where we are right now, Deontay Wilder wasn't going to be able to fight Anthony Joshua before the spring or summer of 2020. The reason being is because he's already committed to taking on Luis Ortiz in a rematch in September. And then he also tweeted maybe 3 days before the Joshua Ruiz fight that he was going to take a rematch with Tyson Fury in the early part of 2020. Most believe the targeted date is somewhere in January. So if you give him 3 to 4 months off, the next or the earliest that he would be fighting again, you'd have to think is April or May, which should have been more than enough time, obviously, for Anthony Joshua. Now, obviously, the Ruiz upset does kind of change things, or at least twist things a little bit, but not so much to the point where an April or May or of 2020 bout can't take place. Think about it like this. Joshua and Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have already initiated the automatic rematch clause that they had in the contract in the event that Ruiz was to upset Joshua as he did. That fight is going to more than likely take place in the fall of 2019. It'll give Joshua some time to kind of get himself together, recuperate. They need to get inside his head. They need to fix whatever went wrong from a strategic standpoint, which I definitely have some theories about what happened with him in the ring. But mentally, they got to get him back on the right page. Once that happens, and assuming it does, I think he has some very correctable issues there against Ruiz. Assuming that happens and he beats Ruiz in the rematch, which if you pay attention to the odds, he's already massively favored to win the rematch. Of course, he was massively favored to win the first fight. It didn't work out. But I'm of the belief that he wins the rematch, right? So that fight more than likely takes place somewhere around the same time that Deontay Wilder fights Luis Ortiz. Now, that's no walk in the park for Deontay Wilder. We all saw that Luis Ortiz had Wilder out on his feet later in that fight, but to Wilder's credit, he was able to recuperate, kind of just survive the onslaught from the Cuban, and then to stop him in the 10th round. It was one of the best fights of 2018. So, all right, so now is Joshua going to just kind of sit and wait on Wilder at that point? Probably not. But if he beats Ruiz in a rematch, and especially if it's relatively definitive, now here we roll around the first month or two of 2020, and Wilder's going to be fighting Tyson Fury, which we all know is not an easy fight for Wilder. I'm of the belief Tyson Fury won the first fight. But Joshua could then take a title defense. Now, of course, this is assuming he beats Ruiz against someone who is not quite as big of a threat, just kind of like a stay busy fight, a fight that allows Joshua to look good. So I wouldn't take on like a Dillian White or anything like that. It's going to be a potentially tough fight, but you take on a fight that allows him to kind of look good just to stay busy. He wins that fight, assuming Wilder comes out victoriously against Tyson Fury, which I do believe he will. I pick him to win the rematch over Tyson Fury more definitively by a knockout. But assuming that happens, then now both of them they're both champions again. I mean, well, Wilder would have never dropped the WBC title. Joshua now is again the WBA, IBF, and WBO champion. And suddenly, we're looking at a fight that could take place around August, September, maybe even late July for all 4 world heavyweight titles. I don't think there's a ton of ifs involved in that. I mean, obviously, yes, Wilder has to win 2 fights, and none of those fights are easy. Joshua has to get himself back together and beat Ruiz. But that right there, boxing fans, is how this fight can still take place on the same timetable, despite the fact that Anthony Joshua was shockingly upset by Andy Ruiz. This is Brian Mazik for Fight Guys. I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.